Great. I think we're ready to start. First of all, SEL and LeanCor would like to thank everyone for taking the time out of their day to attend today's Lean Warehousing Concepts and Principles webinar. My name is Andy Haleblian. I'm with the Georgia Tech Supply Chain and Logistics Institute. Today our host and presenter is Brad Bossence. Brad is a vice president with LeanCor Supply Chain Group. He has over 17 years of third-party logistics experience across automotive, consumer goods, industrial manufacturing, retail, and food and beverage operations. He trains and consults for LeanCor, and he is also the instructor for our Lean Warehousing course taking place September 23rd through the 25th on the Georgia Tech campus. Brad is also an instructor for our Lean Supply Chain Professional Series. He does a lot of instruction for us. He's a great teacher. With that introduction, I'll turn the session over to Brad. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us today. So let's start the discussion with the assessment results. So what we provided was 27 questions, and you were able to rank yourself and your operation on a 1, 3, and 5. So 1 being unstable or no process or no expectation in place. 3 would be functional. We have a process, but it's a bit loose, rarely improved upon, and of course 5 being a high performance. Formal process in place, and we're executing this to our highest level of expectation. We have the list of questions, and we'll provide those in the presentation when we follow this. But it's also a good tool for you to use as well. So there's 27 assessment points, and we compare an assessment no different than you going to the car person, and he's checking your car out, and they're letting you know where some different areas of your vehicle you might look into, or even going to the doctor, and they just do a checkup, and these are some things that we want to investigate further. So a nice tool and a nice way for us to focus the majority of our conversation on some of the weak areas that the feedback provided through the responses. So you'll see these are the sections of the assessment. There's basically 9 categories and 3 questions per, and you'll notice how they rank from left to right. Left being highest category and right being lowest. Very good to see that safety being the first and foremost on everybody's focus. As we work through these different sections, we see we start to fall off right around quality at the source, standardization, and material flow. So let's take a look at what those questions were and how specifically the collective responses rank. So you'll see the first and the highest score was our warehouse processes operate to the pace of customer demand. So that's very exciting to see as well, because what this work all intentionally starts with is customer expectations, and we know that Lean is about serving and satisfying customer needs at the lowest possible cost. But as we work our way down, you'll see there's pretty good rankings for in the material flow areas. Safety always being at the forefront. But as we move to the bottom section, and you'll see that we've highlighted the bottom 6 areas that we will focus on for this particular webinar. So those being regular Gamba walks to occur to identify waste in the warehouse. So first and foremost, what does Gamba mean? And some companies are embracing this, and it's essentially a Japanese term for the place where the work is being done and solving problems at the source. The second that we'll focus on is we use process and takt time to determine number of resources required. So takt time is something else we'll talk about a little bit later. So takt essentially is a German word, but that we've used in Lean and operational excellence, and it just literally means the beat of the drum or the rhythm of the operation, and that's typically the challenge of warehousing, connecting the flow through the 4 walls and out through the customer and in from the supplier. So takt time is always a focus for ours as well. Our team members engaged in formal problem solving. Very common to see the problem solving culture come up in this type of work. We'll spend some time talking about that. We level demand over available working time in the warehouse, which very much connects to the takt time discussion. We implement Poka-Yokes through error-proof processes. So Poka-Yoke is a fun term, and it may be new for some people, but essentially it means error-proof. So we know that people make mistakes in lean culture. We recognize that mistakes happen, but where it becomes a problem is when a mistake is handed off to the next customer in line, and that could be internal, of course, and that then becomes a defect, which is something we absolutely must eliminate. And then last, we focus on standardization of products, isolating and eliminating the cost of SKU complexity. So we'll talk about the ABC analysis and our approach to how we would focus on A's and B's and C SKUs. We find is a lot different than what the industry is doing, and we hope this will help you following the webinar approach SKU stratification a little bit differently. So these are the areas that we'll discuss in the next 45 minutes. So just moving to the next slide, you'll see that on average our lowest score was 27. So some folks out there just said, you know, we're a 1 in absolutely everything. Highest score was 135, which said obviously some folks said we're just a 5 in everything, and maybe that's just the way of getting through the assessment. But it's quite a range. But the average score is just above half, right around 80. So we all recognize that there's opportunity for improvement, and that's what this is all about. So we've got a poll question here that's going to come up, and the question is, do you teach lean and OpEx or operational excellence principles to all members of your warehousing organization? It's a yes or no question, and you can decide which is most appropriate for you. So what you're looking at here with this visual is essentially the lean warehouse with the call-outs being anywhere from some tactics to some tools to principles and behaviors. And I'll talk to some of these specific points, but some of you will recognize that these are no different than lean manufacturing elements and inputs. These are the check marks that have gone into the work that has become what we know as lean manufacturing in 2014 in the last 20 years. But it's interesting that the amount of supply chain opportunity is immense. And a lot of us are recognizing that. Lean inside of the warehouse has been such a focus over these last 5 years that it's just gotten a lot of attention. So if you look at this particular call out, it's asking for questions like, for example, visual management, is the status of the operation visible? So this is a perfect question that when we enter a warehouse operation, the first question we typically want to ask the leader is, are we having a good day? Are we having a bad day? And how do you know? Because typically when we go into a factory, they're using visual management to isolate hour-by-hour visibility, problems as they come up. And we've done a good job at that in factories, but why don't we do that in warehouses? We can do that. We've been programmed throughout our lives to understand at a warehouse, and it's very difficult to find out if it's a good day or a bad day without actually logging into a system and finding out. So our lean principle starts with the status of the operation and making it visible for everyone to see. And we believe that that's important because we're all part of the same team and we all need to be serving the same purpose. And making that clear for everybody is certainly the challenge. And there's different visuals we'll show you throughout this webinar that have kind of helped us attack that particular principle with tools. And you'll see, you know, throughout the call-outs, different, are we doing Gamba walks? Are we constantly interacting with customers? How is our ABC analysis? Is it based on volume or is it based on stability? Do we have a formal problem-solving process? Safety. Do we have safety behaviors? Are they visible? How can we tell these things? So once again, you have a great visual for an assessment that we use quite a bit, and it helps us articulate our vision of what a lean warehouse would be, essentially. So if we look at the poll, and our responses show that just about 28% have said yes, we do teach lean and OpEx principles to all members of the organization. And of course, the rest, about 72%, 71% said no, we don't. And we recognize that's an issue. We recognize that, you know, as a culture inside of a warehouse organization, we need to believe the same things. So it's important, first of all, to define what is a principle. So as a lot of us are parents, a lot of us have have grown up in communities, and there's just rules, and there's things that we just absolutely believe in, or things that we don't believe in. We don't need data to tell us these things. We've learned, certainly through the Shingo Institute, certainly through the writings of great authors as Womack and Shook, and certainly Robert Martichenko, the CEO of LeanCor, and what we're trying to focus on here at LeanCor is the principle-based organization. So what are those things that are absolutely most important? And teach those. And from there, we'll understand what the tools need to be in order to achieve the alignment on these principles. So we recognize that there's a gap. If we're not teaching principles to everyone, then we're going to have conflicting processes, conflicting actions, and certainly ultimately waste results from these things. So what are those principles? In our lean supply chain focus is certainly the focus of LeanCor is to optimize supply chains for our customers. We use principles to approach our work. When we use these principles with rigor and we attach them to every action that we make, certainly whether it be in project work, in our operations work, in our warehousing work, but we find that these are the principles that we embrace in order to make sure that we're eliminating waste in all aspects of the work that we actually do. So we've got 7 here, and we encourage that you embrace these principles as well. And sometimes you may need some of your own unique principles. We found that these 7 are the ones that apply to improving the flow, the speed of material, developing people. So the first one being make consumption visible throughout the fulfillment stream. So what does that mean? It means that we need to understand what demand really is, and we need to see what demand is. And why is that important? Because we want to prevent the forecast. And the running joke, of course, of forecasts is that they're never right. And the closer the second rule, of course, is that the closer we get, the shorter the lead time in a forecast, the more accurate it's going to be. So the struggle with warehousing often is that we don't understand what demand is until the day of or the last minute. So what we're advocating here is that a lot of the work should be around understanding what true demand will be so that we can apply the appropriate work and resources to the inventory reduction. Create level flow to reduce variation is what we call the pitch inside of our operation, the rhythm, and much easier to apply resource allocation and predictability. Problems are much more visibility in level flow organizations. You always use pull systems, never push. Collaborate and solve problems and focus on process discipline. So this 5th here is very deep, because it's not whether we have a process that uses pull or push or whatnot. This talks about the problem-solving organization. This means that as a lean organization, we all solve problems. So we recognize that problems are a good thing, and we need to make them visible. And we all need to respect the processes that we enforce. So the problem-solving culture, there's a lot inside of this recommendation, but there's also great benefit in believing in process discipline, solving problems. Increase velocity to drive flexibility to meet customer demand. We very much relate velocity to frequency. The example I used with a colleague yesterday is if I was I'm going to fly out of the Atlanta airport and I need to get to Chicago. If there's only one flight per day and that flight was an hour ago, then my lead time essentially is going to be 23 hours, 24 hours. I'm not going to get to Chicago until tomorrow. But there happens to be 12, 13, 14, 15 plus flights to Chicago. So the velocity of me getting to Chicago from Atlanta is much higher because there's a lot more frequency. So the idea of frequency and velocity coming together just provides much more flexibility, certainly with material planning. The obvious challenge would be transportation costs and material handling costs to balance that, which leads us to the 7th principle is lead and make decisions based on the total cost of fulfillment. Total cost of fulfillment meaning all of those costs inside of moving product from our suppliers to our customers and understanding that some cost increases while others decrease. So we really need to understand all of the different elements that go into total cost thinking. So let's get into the opportunities. So the first opportunity that we cited earlier was regular Gamba walks to occur to identify waste inside the warehouse. So once again, Gamba, what that means is where the work is actually being performed. And a very traditional organization, you'll see leaders inside of offices, and you'll see big buildings perhaps, but not the actual leaders where the actual work is being done. There's so much value in actually seeing work being performed, and certainly something we've learned from leader standard work is, as leaders, we need to have standards inside of our schedules. We need to understand what is important for the success of our actual role, and we absolutely insist that going to the Gamba is critical to understanding variation, waste, team member engagement, the things that are really important to a lean organization. There's different questions, of course, that we could ask when we go to the Gamba, but ultimately this is about a deeper understanding of some issues. I'm reminded of a problem or project I was working on with a customer just a few weeks ago, and it was inside the idea of the problem of certain product with just product shrinkage. And there was a project team working on this particular issue inside of a nice conference room, and outside of the conference room, of course, was where the work was being performed. So I'm coaching the project team, and one of my first questions is, did we go to the Gamba? Did we ask the team members? And so we did that as a team, and what was really powerful is that the solutions we were coming up with were way off from what we actually saw. And what we saw at the Gamba was that the packaging was misleading, leading to mispicks. We also saw empty material handling operators driving by that actual area where it was earlier cited that there was nobody available to do any picking from that area. We also saw that there was visual management, but it wasn't being used. So really powerful, literally 3 minutes of just standing in this area and seeing some of the issues. Now, one of the things that we certainly see is that when it comes to visual management, there's literally graveyards of efforts and failed attempts at different tools that may have worked and may have not worked, and a lot of them are behind the factory or behind the warehouse, maybe in the back area, and we see these things, and that's okay. We need to be trying different things out, but when it comes to visuals, they need to be telling us a story. They need to be telling us if there's a problem, and the sign of a great visual is one that's being used. So visual management and Gamba walks go hand in hand, provided we know that we're going to engage people that do the work, and we're looking for problems. Very powerful activity. We encourage that you look at your standard work and those of your team and your warehouse operators, and just ask the question, how much time are you spending at the Gamba, and can we standardize this? Can we make this happen daily or every other day, but make sure that it's happening, because we catch problems before they become bigger problems. So we see the next opportunity in the assessment being process and Takt time to determine number of resources, so people and equipment inside the warehouse. So this is an interesting challenge as well. When we approach number of resources required to do the work, we want to understand a few different elements. First of all, we want to understand the demand. Then we want to understand the standard work and the process time it takes to do this particular work. And from there, what we can do is calculate something called Takt time, which you'll see the calculation is available time over demand. So if you just look at this spreadsheet, and this will be part of what we send out, and we've got some different templates, and you're always welcome to our tools, is the daily demand being 100 trailers, and our shift statistics underneath showing what our working minutes are per shift. We subtract all of the non-working time, so that's lunches and breaks, and we come up to a total working time of 840 minutes per day. So takt time, therefore, would be 100 trailers divided by 840 minutes for available working time, which tells us that we need to be producing, processing one trailer every 8.4 minutes. And then to determine the number of resources required, we just take that process time divided by the takt time. So for 6 team members. So let me first say that it's one thing to do some math to a very busy warehouse and tell a warehouse operator that has twice that amount of people that they should only have 6, because that's just not going to resonate very well with that warehouse operator. There's a lot of problems going on. There's a lot of warehouse variation and just the things that we deal with inside of the 4 walls and certainly outside of the 4 walls. So what this math assumes, first of all, is that we have stabilized the demand of trailers. This means we have 100 trailers. It means we've stabilized the process times. It means it takes 50 minutes every time we process a trailer. It also means that we're able to level all that activity throughout the day, and it also requires some visibility outside of the 4 walls. So what we're saying here is that in an ideal state, it would take 6 team members to process 100 trailers over 840 working minutes. However, the work to get to 6 team members needs to be inside of those first 3 points. Stabilize the demand, stabilize the process times, and level the activity throughout the day. That's where the work should be. And most of that activity is certainly is outside of the 4 walls of the warehouse. Certainly we can typically control process times, but when it comes to demand, when it comes to leveling demand, we find that there's more work that can be done that a lot of time isn't being done because we just don't understand where to focus first. So let's look at the third opportunity, and this is around all team members engaged in a formal problem-solving process or for continuous improvement. And this is not probably new to a lot of people. There's many problem-solving models out there. We've learned DMAIC, we've learned PDCA, various different A3s, root cause analyses from 5-wide to fishbone, and different tools. But certainly what we've learned is that if you don't teach this model to everyone in the organization, then it will not succeed. It becomes a tool that's run by somebody else. It becomes a punitive exercise rather than a learning exercise. So we've certainly learned from some of the great companies that have embraced some of these problem-solving models is that everybody in the organization has learned them and they're expected to participate in them. So once again, to be a lean culture, what does that mean? Well, it means that we solve problems. It means that we make our problems visible. It means that the people doing the work solve their problems, and ultimately we learn from these problems and we apply best practices. And the cycle continues and continues and continues. So problem-solving model is a tool. Certainly the thinking is about collaboration and engaging team members to solve their own problems so that they can prevent other ones that come up. The fourth opportunity we focused on, well, just actually before we do that, we've got another quick question. So this is on the left side. We've got high use of technology versus low, and we've got process discipline on the bottom, low versus high. Which would be the lowest performing operation? Just give a second while the polls come in. Okay, so it's interesting. We're getting a lot of C being the lowest performance operation. So C would say that we've got low technology and low process discipline. Certainly, we would think that B would be your highest performance operation. So we're great use of technology, but great use of process discipline. But one of the things that we need to be careful about, and this is the trap that we often fall in, is technology to fix problems. If we have a low commitment to processes and we have high technology, what we've done essentially is sped up the movement of problems, or we're making waste move a lot faster. So we would advocate that high technology and low process discipline becomes very, very expensive. We hear the solution to some warehouse turnover, warehouse performance issues, warehouse lead time, a lot of time is implement technology, new warehousing management systems, things like that. But certainly we advocate that good old-fashioned process discipline would be the first thing that we should be focusing on. A fun little question. So opportunity 4, this gets back to the takt time and leveling demand over available time in the warehouse. And it's very similar to takt time, but this here just looks at, why don't we just do some what-if analysis? It's the same spreadsheet, but if we had if it took more time to process a trailer, if it took less time to process a trailer. And sometimes this needs to be a daily calculation. You know, we've learned a lot, certainly from Toyota through the years and their rigorous use of takt time, and some of you on the phone call for certain. But not all of us have stable demand. We recognize that. So what we need to do in some of these cases is get down into smaller buckets. Maybe we use, rather than the entire week of available time, we do this and adjust this on a daily basis. But certainly it requires different focus on those inputs, that's the process times, the leveling of demand, the stabilizing and levelizing of inputs. Time studies are a very popular process for people to do. Sometimes we'll have engineers do these things, but this isn't something that we need someone else to do. We can do time studies ourselves, the team members doing the work. Often what we recommend is the lowest repeatable time of a process. Typically when you measure someone doing a process, they typically speed up. So you want to try this over and over and over again and make sure that it's a safe work environment. So by safe, we mean, of course, safety in terms of injuries, but safe in terms of it's okay to be honest. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to work at the right pace and not a fast pace. Fast does not necessarily mean right. Sometimes fast means overproduction, and which we know leads to all the other wastes. If we look at some different visuals here, you'll see just in the top left corner that we're using, this is a LeanCor warehouse operation, and what we've done with the customers is really understand what their production schedule is. By understanding what their production schedule is, we can work backwards into our processes and then use takt time and process time and stabilization of those to understand where we need to be inside of our warehouse processes. This is a visual that's blown up, probably 12 by 12 feet, that everybody in the warehouse can see. It's the score. It's the score of the game that everybody operates to. It's the ticker, the cadence of the operation. A different creative use of visual management. If the color is purple, then you're working ahead. You need to slow down. Yellow and red, of course, would be bad. Green would be you're working at the right pace. So just some really creative ways to create that pace setter visual. And again, these ideas were developed from the people doing the work. The picture in the middle is a much more simplified version of a shipping schedule, a plan versus actual. What we believe in is fixed frequencies, and we measure those frequencies. Are we ahead? Are we early? Are we late? And then problem solve. Why were we late? And certainly what goes on the truck is the other big piece of that. Something else that a lot of companies are doing, certainly in the automotive industry, is using the yard management system or yard management in general. Not necessarily a system, but there are systems out there that do this, but just to create a buffer. So rather than live unloads, we're arriving in a trailer, we've got a little bit of time, and then we pull the trailer in, and we use disciplined process management to manage that yard. Certainly, it is more waste, so we want to avoid that if we can, but it's certainly an option. So opportunity 5 is in around Poka-Yokes. Are we using Poka-Yokes to prevent defects from happening? I think it's really powerful to teach the people that do the work the power of understanding that difference between errors and defects. Rule number one is never pass on a defect. Rule number two would be never accept a defect. So it's really important to know what perfect looks like, and that's where it starts with. Do the team members understand what their expectations are, and are we hitting those expectations? We know that mistakes happen, and to err it's human to make errors, we like to say. There's obviously a certain, they need to be part of the solution to preventing these things. Different examples of Poka-Yokes inside of warehouses, it might include stickers and different types of visual management. You've got detection types of Poka-Yokes, there may be noise or visuals that give you alerts. Like, for example, your seatbelt is not on. In the 90s, the Ford company started doing this. The other companies started doing that as well. It just keeps dinging until you put your seatbelt on. It'll allow you to drive, but it'll drive you nuts. Now, you can also have preventative ones. I think there's examples of putting your diesel pump in the gas tank, or vice versa. And if any of you have done that, I apologize for bringing up some bad memories. But the fact is, it won't fit in one or the other. So these are some different ideas. We encourage you to ask the people to come up with their own ideas. We've got a website that shows there's a couple of Poka-Yoke videos on our LeanCor.com website, and 5-minute videos. They're more than yours to use for teaching and training and sharing with your people, different things that have worked along the years. So we'll look at number 6, and this is around SKU complexity, and this is fun for us to dive into is the ABC stratification. If you look at the top of the visual, you see the traditional ABC analysis. Probably 80% of companies will classify ABC based on volume. So, for example, quarterly volume, if you look at 4,800, percentage of total, cumulative percentage, and what we're doing is a Pareto analysis, or good old-fashioned 80-20, and we're saying that approximately 70-80% of our high-volume SKUs, they become our A's, and what we do is we put those in the front of our warehouses. But the problem with this is it doesn't take into account stability and the movement of these particular SKUs. What we will do is approach this a little bit differently and understand what the coefficient of variation is of these SKUs. So in other words, how do they vary? Are they stable? Do they move every day, or do they move only seasonal? We could see seasonal products sitting in the front of a warehouse that just isn't moving 3/4 of the year because of a traditional ABC analysis, and that's a big problem. Team members know what they're doing every day, and they know what they're touching every day. And a lot of times you can just ask about warehouse layout. But here's a great way of doing it and understanding standard deviation of demand. From there, you can calculate coefficient of variation and sort ascending rather than descending on volume. So your low coefficient of variation is very high stable. Those would be the SKUs we touch every day. Those would be the ones we put in front of the warehouse. Very, very high-level approach to ABC stratification. But this next visual here is pretty powerful, because if we plot these SKUs based on volume and based on demand, so looking at both of those inputs, it's really interesting to see that on the left-hand side, if we have very low variation but really, really, really high volume, then those are our main. That's our product. If it's Hugo Boss, for example, right? That's the blue shirts. It's the Honda Accord. It's the product that we're all very, very, very familiar with. And most of our processes are built around these. We don't have to do a lot of planning. We can just say things like, this will move every Monday morning at 8 o'clock, or every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and just build standards around these things and then improve from there. Coefficient of up to 0.5 or 50%, those are good candidates for pull systems. But as we move far, far out, we'll see huge, huge variation and very, very, very little demand. It's a very powerful visual to say to your organization as you're collaborating over SKU decisions is, why are we even making this? Are we making any money on this product? And some of you that are certainly leading warehouses, you know that this product is now sitting in your warehouse, taking up space, and it's not moving. It's affecting your turns. and that's a lot of time that's your KPI. That's what you're going after. So we'll look at this flow, and we'll understand that sometimes there's product that just isn't moving, and we need to make a decision on what to do with that product. It's just taking up space. It's costing us money. And in the terms of cost and money, this is another nice way of taking a look at the cost of carrying inventory. In very, very high level, if we were to take a look at raw materials, WIP, finished goods, and some of you might be just finished goods warehouses, some of you might be inbound, some of you might have some processes going on inside, some value added, but let's just say our average days on hand is $40 million in inventory. What's inside of that, the carrying cost of carrying that number is all the numbers below. So we have the cost of capital, which is money being tied up. We call that 7% obsolescence. So some of it just isn't going to go anywhere. So maybe it becomes scrap. We have shrinkage, which typically results from poor counting. Sometimes when we do an inventory check, the best thing to do is check it again if the numbers aren't right. A lot of times the first answer that comes up is theft, and the actual number one cause of shrinkage is just poor accounting processes. Damage, insurance, now we need a WMS to support these things, and of course taxes and all of the above for an inventory carrying cost of 20%. Or $8 million of average days on hand. So if anybody out there still believes that lean is about headcount reduction, here's a powerful way to say, no, it isn't. Reducing average days on hand is a direct impact on bottom line. So we don't want bad inventory. This is a very serious issue that we're all facing. So we'll come to some questions here. We're at about 11:45, and there's a few comments that have come up. First, I'd like to just make mention that our friends from the Georgia Tech Logistics and Supply Chain Institute are on the call here as well, and we've got a class September 23rd to 25th at GT at the Georgia Tech downtown Atlanta. A wonderful facility. It's a great class. It's very interactive. It's going to be 3 days of a simulation. It'll be myself with Dave Graham from LeanQuest that'll be facilitating the class. Because you're on this webinar, you'll receive a discount. It's 20%, which is very handsome. Thank you to our friends, Carol. And there's some information where you can contact them for that discount. Also, I'd like to make mention that there's a lean inbound logistics class in beautiful Savannah, Georgia. It includes a tour of the Target DC. I don't think we have anybody from Target on the call today. Good friends of ours, and they've opened up their doors for a tour of their actual facility as well. So that'll be in Savannah on September 29th. So we have a couple questions, and there's 3 or 4 asking about whether the slide deck will be available. Yes, it absolutely will be. The challenge of these presentations is, I think it was Roosevelt once upon a time said that it would take them 10 minutes to write a 1-hour speech and 1 hour to write a 10-minute speech. We've got a lot of information, different tools that we've used. We've got videos, and they're absolutely yours for sharing. So I think Kelly will be sending the deck out to everybody that is registered. But if you've got some questions, then certainly my contact information is above. Just look for some more. Just some other comments. I see that somebody agreed that 100% inspection will not achieve 100% error-free. Inspections are human too. That's a really good point. And first and foremost, inspection is sometimes required. At the end of the day, it's not about cutting costs. It's about achieving 100% delivery expectations, and then we work back and reduce our costs. So if we're doing inspection, then we need to understand why we're doing inspection, and there's different ways of isolating some of the issues. Some friends of mine at Lennox have done some really good work with pick errors, and what they're doing is each and every time there's a pick error, there's a Pareto, and they're understanding what those main areas are, and then they'll work with the team member specifically to understand what the problem was. But once again, they've had to create a very safe environment, that it's not that you're in trouble, it's that there was a process failure. We need to understand why, what happened. And the amount of improvements that have come from this specific activity is just absolutely outstanding. The operations in McDonough, Georgia, absolutely outstanding. Just improvements with 5S, visual management, employee engagement. Team members are coming up with ideas before errors are actually happening. I think there's a question, is there a reason you didn't include safety, audit training, and preventative maintenance into your daily time? No, absolutely not. In fact, that's a great call out. We have to build time for safety. And then this is a learning opportunity for LeanCor as well. Is we're, once again, I mentioned earlier, we're trying to build our management system in and around principles, and safety behaviors being one of them. Absolutely, we should have standard work focusing on safety, teaching people things before they certainly become issues. I think we didn't focus on safety for this particular webinar, was that the results were so high, so we wanted to focus on some of the low areas. Let's see. Lyle, you had a question around already paying for the class and maybe get a discount now. Just contact Carol at Georgia Tech. The information is on the slides. She'll work with you on that. Absolutely. I think, and then there's one more question here. It's a good question. Can you talk about how you use pull systems when a call center drops work on the DC and the requirement is to ship same day? Any ideas how to address? So great question. And here what we have is very, very, very short lead time, and we have cutoffs. So for example, some of you have to have same day ship. Everything needs to be out by 5 o'clock. You know, the way that we approach this particular problem is that, you know, we're going to have instances, like I mentioned Lennox, so people's air conditioners, they go out. We need to replenish absolutely immediately. But one thing that we do see often is that there are trends. So if we look back in the last 6 months, we can typically count on a particular SKU or a SKU family being something that's going to move every day. I don't have an order for it yet, but it's probably going to happen. So now we start to get into that gray area between forecast and guessing and facility layout. But really the work there is, once again, it's around understanding what demand is going to be. I think sometimes, you know, when you lift, as you say, you peel back the onion or you look under the hood, and we would want to collaborate and talk to customer service and understand those orders and how they're being processed and how quickly they're being conveyed to the warehouse. One of the things that you might find is that the order was known even hours or 2 hours before, and some of these orders are being batched to the warehouse. Customer service typically doesn't think about material flow; they think about satisfying the customer. So this becomes a system thinking problem. And how can we work together to give me more lead time? To how can I make sure that I have the right SKUs at the right place at the right time inside the warehouse? And it doesn't happen once. It's not a one-time Kaizen event. It's constant, because this is the instability of last-minute orders. It's the enemy, instability. So we want to make that problem really visible and know that we're working on it and understand what the consequences are of these things. But like I say, I think typically you'll find that there's consistency in some of how these orders are being not only conveyed to the warehouse, but the consistency of those SKUs. And then there's a question here. I think this is probably the last question, Kelly. We've got one. If I were to do a time study, would I suggest watching the best, the middle, or the worst performer? And, you know, once again, the idea of processes is that we want to develop excellent processes that anyone can follow and are all following. If people aren't connecting to the process performance expectations, then there's a why, and there's an understanding of why that's actually happening or not happening. But I think I'd want to have definitely a sample of different people doing the process over a period of time, reflection, but ultimately we should all be doing the same pace. There's a really nice tool that I've seen at a hardware distributor, well-known company. They've got a pace setter inside of their distribution center. So what you would do is you walk, call it 30 feet, and it times you how fast you go. And typically what you want to do is you want to walk fast. But what it's telling you is to either slow down or speed up, but it takes safety into account, meaning this is the pace we expect you to be working at. So there's different expectations that go inside a process, but I wouldn't focus on the quality of the workers so much as the executional. Can the process be executed by anyone? I don't need an excellent performer. I need everybody to be able to do this process. Okay, I think that's it for the questions, Kelly. I'll hand it over to you.
Yep, thanks, Brad. If any of you have any more questions, you can contact Brad at the email address on the screen there. And as he stated before, we'll also be sending an email to all the attendees with links to watch the recording as well as download the slides. And we'll also be sending out information and the 20% discount code to the Lean Warehousing course at Georgia Tech. And I think that's all we have. So thank you for attending today's presentation and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.